Yeah, a bit about it. Just one thing I did want to make clear. Although I'm the general editor of a book called Carter-Ruck on libel and privilege, I have nothing to do with Carter-Ruck law firm. I'm certainly not a party. I'm not a member of that law firm. I don't know the full details of the Trafigura case. I'm not sure if anybody does, but a number of news organisations have got the facts wrong. The BBC, for example, suggested that, in fact, Trafigura had killed people. That's not true. And they paid damages.
How do you know it's not true?
Because they paid damage. Why would they pay damages? They could prove it.
Because they settled out of court for tactical reasons. You say that's not true.
But the BBC is an organisation that certainly has...
I'm through and through on this case, you know.
And?
We published the BBC's defence, which was suppressed, their entire legal defence. Okay, Carter-Ruck sent me letters about this case. Right. The original leaked emails we worked with The Guardian. Okay, so how do you know it's not true? According to UN report in September, 108,000 people were driven to seek medical attention in the Ivory Coast. The allegation was that the BBC produced that perhaps 14 of those people died as a result. Now, I say to you, 108,000 people go to hospital, all different types, children, old women, etc. Even just going to hospital, is it unreasonable that 14 of them died on the way in the Ivory Coast in Africa in the middle of the night? Of course, you expect 14 people to die if they're driven to hospital. And here you are saying that it is not true.
Well,
what are your facts, sir?
All I'm saying is that the BBC chose not to defend it.
No, that's not what you said. Is it?
I can't remember.
I can.
Right.
Can everyone else remember what he said? Yeah. Right.
Right. And why did the BBC choose not to defend it?
Because they viewed it might take £2 million in the UK system to defend it, and they could just drop that case and start reporting on a new case instead with that £2 million. In the UK, the burden of proof is on the publisher. Have you stopped beating your wife yet? Prove it to me. See you in court.
The alternative is if you accuse me of being a paedophile, I have to prove that I'm not.
No, that is not the alternative.
Of course
and the reason that the UK jurisdiction is abused so much is because the burden of proof is on the writer to prove everything. That means if you're a Ukrainian investigative journalist, and I know some that write about the electricity oligarchy in the Ukraine, in a Ukrainian newspaper, who was sued in London by that Ukrainian oligarch, and couldn't afford or chose not to spend money briefing lawyers in the UK paying for that whole case. They instantly lost because they did not establish their proof burden. Furthermore, libel cases in the UK on average are 100 times the expense of libel cases in continental Europe. Now, the strategy used by Carter-Ruck and other libel firms working that sector is to do what? It is to make publishers bleed. Publishers don't have much money. If you're working for a billionaire like Nahadimi Auchi, all you have to do is keep the publisher in court, keep them bleeding with legal costs. Eventually, the publishers say, we cannot sustain these legal costs anymore, therefore we're just going to pull out of the case. At the moment you pull out of the case, you haven't established your proof burden. Under the UK system, you are then liable for all your opponent's costs, the result of which is that you have to pay all the opponent's costs. You spoke about damages, but you deliberately avoided costs. Costs are normally more than damages. So that's how the whole trick works. And don't think that, you know, that people like me don't know it back and forward, because we do.
I'm well aware that you have very considerable experience with that. Sorry. No, I'm well aware you have very considerable experience of that. I would concede, and I'd be the first to concede, and indeed if you read what I've written, you will see that one of the things that I do think is very scandalous in England is the cost. It seems to me if you've made that accusation, the burden lies on you to substantiate, and not the other way round.
Would you agree with that?
We can look at how things actually work in practice rather than going to Platonic hypotheticals. So how things actually work in practice. What's our first question? Which country is suffering from too much freedom of speech? Name it. Is there one suffering from too much freedom of speech? Come on. America. I only wish that were true in the United States. What? In the United States, celebrities can't function? There's no politics in the United States? I am continually vilified in the United States in all sorts of ways, and it's very annoying. Okay. But okay, so I just respond. And there are processes for responding to libels, and libel law is actually important. There is an example. If we had no libel laws, we would see Coke saying that Pepsi was full of cyanide. So there are strong reasons which are politically sustainable for there to be libel laws dealing with malicious libel. But the cases in the UK, these are just extraordinary and extraordinary abuses. And it is, in a way, it is not the law at the end that is the problem. It is the law at the beginning that is the problem. It is the process that is the problem, and it is inequitous access to justice that is the problem. That is why in the IMI, process protections are so strong, and why California has introduced anti-SLAPP legislations to stop the process itself being abused. For example, Time magazine, in writing its expose of Scientology in 1991, a country where you suggested maybe there is too much freedom of speech, Time magazine had to pay $8 million in current terms to get that case to the Supreme Court. $8 million, which they did not get back. So that is in effect an $8 million fine against Time magazine for investigative journalism exposing the abuses of a cult.